Welcome to the Launching From podcast, sponsored by Irvly Productions. He makes me look great. And as always, if you haven't, please like and subscribe so you can be notified of future content. So as we're going through this dating series, today I want to talk about compatibility versus preference. Now, if you haven't watched the previous videos, I implore that you do that, okay? Because all these concepts are building on each other. So after you get to know yourself, after you're getting to know the other person, what you're really looking for now is to determine if you are compatible and, notice what I said, and if they have certain preferences that you like. So let's talk a little bit about compatibility. It's a controversial statement or concept. A lot of people don't want to talk about compatibility anymore because there's this idea that you can become compatible with just anybody. I personally don't support that idea. I do believe that if there is a significant amount of baseline compatibility, then you can make minor tweaks to become more compatible. I believe that. But I also believe that if there are no baseline compatibilities or there's low level compatibility in the relationship, it is just that much harder, to make the relationship work. So when I say compatibility, what I'm saying is somebody who complements or harmonizes with who you are. You know yourself. It starts there. And as you're getting to know the person, you're looking to see if they complement or harmonize with who you are. And in some cases, the opposites of who you are is what you need. But in other cases, you need similarities for this thing to work. And what those things are, that's the thing. It really depends on you, and it depends on the life that you want to live. So there is no right or wrong answer when it comes to that. But if you don't know yourself, it's very difficult to know if this person is compatible with you. See, when you don't date for compatibility, what ends up happening is you start dating for preference, and preference is like icing on the cake. What do I mean? If you eat icing all day with no cake, it's sweet and it tastes good, but after a while it gets really old, it gets really boring. It doesn't even fill you up. You get a stomach ache because of all that sugar, might even develop worms, right? Like eating icing without cake, honestly, what are you doing? Like, what are you really doing with your life, right? Not saying that cake is any healthier, but at least cake has some type of substance to it, You can eat the cake, and if there's icing on the cake, even better, right? So preferences are dealing with the bonuses, the shallow things, what I call the shallow things. Typically, the preference are the things that are going to flee just with age, generally speaking. So things like physical appearance, right? That's a preference. I would argue the amount of money somebody makes, that should be a preference. Their style, how they dress, that's a preference, on some level, how educated they are, that's a preference on some level. But it really boils down to who you are and what you need in order to live the life that you want to live. And so, for example, with myself, I use myself as an example. I didn't have a long list of preferences. I had my list of what I call non-negotiables, okay? There are certain things that are non-negotiable because if these things are absent, then this person would not be compatible with me, right? So some of my non-negotiables was, dealing with jealousy, some other things. I'm not going to get too personal with you. I'm always getting personal with you. I'm not going to give y'all no more than that, right? But I did have some non-negotiables, jealousy really being one of them. I knew that based off the life that I was living and the life that I was about to move towards, I could not be with a jealous woman. I didn't have the time to have to consistently validate and affirm her. She needed to have a security in our relationship. That was a non-negotiable for me. And brothers, let me tell you, best decision of my life, okay? A lot of the headaches that y'all going through, I don't even experience them things. Boy, because my wife is not a jealous woman. And I met a lot of great women before my wife. I promise you I did. Most of them were disqualified because their jealousy meter was just too high for me. Asking me questions that I really didn't feel like answering, not because I was doing anything wrong, but because the fact that I would have to answer this question in this stage of our interaction, it read to me red flag. I looked at it like, if you're questioning some of my relationships with my friends that are females, and we've only been involved a few months, I'm not about to go the rest of my life answering these questions. You've lost your mind. I'm a public servant. I do too much in the community. There is no way. So for me, the jealousy was a non-negotiable. But I knew that because I knew who I was. Also, like, I know y'all might see me as some evolved person, some like mature person. I have petty tendencies, okay? I can get very petty. So if you accuse me of things that I'm not doing, the petty part of me says I'm about to go do those things. Since I'm already reaping the consequences of doing these things, I might as well get the benefit of it, right? And so with jealous women, they tend to accuse you of inappropriate relationships when there's nothing inappropriate. They just insecure. You know what I mean? And headache. They have time for that. Now, I got some friends, they can handle the jealous woman. It's not a turnoff for them. It's not a non-negotiable for them. For them, it's like, I can handle a little bit of jealousy. Some of my friends, they even like it. It makes them feel like she's feeling them for real, and so they like the jealousy. Not me. It's a non-negotiable. I don't like to argue. I don't like to plead my case. So jealousy was a big thing. I had other non-negotiables, but that jealousy one was like the non-negotiable. Like that, I could not waver in at all. And so why am I bringing this up? Well, you need to know what your non-negotiables are. If you're a social person, let's say, now you might not forever be a social person. That's very much true. But if you did the work of getting to know yourself and you realize you like to be outside, you like to mingle with people, that's like something that you need to feel fulfilled in life, then you need to make sure that you're with somebody who either A, also likes to go outside, or B, won't nag you about going outside, right? You see, so this is what I mean, where you can connect with a homebody, which is the opposite of you, but they have a respect about you being outside. In fact, that might help you, because if your person is not an outside person, then as you become more established in life, right? Because honestly, if you're outside all the time, honestly, what are you really doing with your life, right? But if you are once you become more established, maybe you start having younger kids or whatever, you have that homebody that you can go home to. Say, you know what? Let me go ahead and go home because I've been outside long enough. This was great. This was cool. And you know that when you come home, there's somebody who's going to make that house a home, if you will. It's going to be a warm environment, a loving environment. They're not going to nag you. You could tell them about the things that you've seen and the different type of interactions. That could be a whole vibe. It could be. But you might want your partner with you. That might be something, that might be even just a part of how you feel loved and appreciated. Where it's like, look, if I'm outside, I want both of us to step. We got to put that stuff on. That might be your non-negotiable. So here's the thing. Let me adjust the glasses, right? For it to truly be a non-negotiable, what you're saying is, if I don't have this in my life, I will feel less fulfilled. That's what you're saying when you call it a non-negotiable. And you should really take some thought into it, especially if you're young. If you're young, I'm talking like early 20s, you ain't got no kids yet, or even if you have a child or two, these are things you have to consider, right? Because as we all know, once you have kids, things change. And I'm going to go deeper into this when I talk about intentional dating, but just hear me out right now. You have to have the ability to know yourself, your core you, but also know where you're going in life. Like, what's the end goal? Like, if you're in school to be a doctor, let's say, medical school, that time of medical school and residency, it's torture, right? It's a lot of effort. It's hell even. You may not have the time to date and travel like you want because you got to get these things done. But that's not going to be the rest of your life. And so you might get with someone who can handle, you being absent or unavailable. But then when you do become more available, then yeah, I know as a doctor you got to be on call and all this stuff. So you still need someone who can handle your absence. But what happens when life isn't so hard and you don't have to hustle and bustle and you have time to travel and you realize that's something you want to do, you want to travel the world? What happens if you connect with someone who doesn't want to do those things? You find yourself now being committed for life, quote unquote, with someone that is incompatible with you. You know what I mean? And it could have been avoided had you had the foresight to say, yeah, this is my life now, but all this hustle and bustle is to an end. I'm trying to get somewhere, and when I get there, I want my whole life to change. Even this idea of going outside, like I mentioned before, going outside when you ain't got no kids, oh yeah, that's hella fun. That's lit. Like, we outside. When you start having kids, I mean, if you're a responsible parent, I'll put that disclaimer out. If you're a responsible parent, going outside ain't really the most important thing now. You know what I mean? Like, you got to take care of this child or children. They got to eat. They need clothes. They need to be loved on. They need a routine so that they can learn how the world works. You got to be available for all the stages, right? You want to be there for their first word. You want to be there when they take their first steps. Being outside ain't really, looking for babysitters and all that on a consistent, regular basis. Your whole life might change when you have kids. And if that was the glue that kept y'all together, now what? Now your relationship is threatened because you didn't have the foresight to understand compatibility. So compatibility starts with you knowing you, but it also leads into you knowing where you want to go in life. I did a whole thing about vision casting and all that, and I believe that should be a part of your dating. So when I'm saying these things, I talk about getting to know a person, right? When you're getting to know the person, you're just learning who they are. Now, what do you do with that information? You take that information and you align it with who you are and where you want to go in life, right? That's how you determine compatibility. So if you're a life learner, let's say you love to study, that's dope. That means you're going to need some quiet time. You're going to need some time alone, right? Because as you're reading or as you're learning, you don't need your partner disrupting you. That's going to give you a certain level of resentment and all those other things. You are a life. So you can either get with someone who's also a life learner, so that y'all reading whatever y'all reading separate, or maybe y'all turn into a thing, y'all learn certain things together. That works. Or you get with someone who respects that this is important to you based off of who you are. And they recognize, okay, for a couple hours a day, they're not going to be available, not because they out doing BS or foolishness. No, they are a life learner. This is what they are. So even you could be in academics, you're going for your PhD now, but even when you're done getting your doctorate, you're still going to learn because you're a life learner. Or you might not be in academia, but you love to read books. Compatibility says I'm with someone who's either with that type of timing or they will at the very least respect it. And I could go on and on about different examples, but I'll touch this one because this tends to be a thing. And I know this is not the Friday experience. See, the Friday experience where I get real spiritual with you, right? But since we're talking about dating, let me talk about, religion. Because this is a big one. And let me just say this. There's a term in the Bible called being equally yoked that tends to get thrown around. And a lot of people interpret that term as to mean you're of the same religion. Let me help you here. Because no, that ain't it. You could be of the same religion with somebody and still not be equally yoked. Because there's this assumption that because you're part of the same religion, that means you value the same things. You have the same perspective on things. But hopefully you're mature enough to understand that that's not true. That you can be in the same religion or same denomination even and have very different perspectives on what certain things mean. And so understanding that, and here's the other part. You could be in different religions or different denominations and have similar perspectives of what certain things mean. So when you're dating someone, I know that certain denominations, I know in certain denominations, they won't marry you if you're not the same denomination. I know that exists. And for you, you got to decide was most important, your allegiance to this denomination or your future happiness? That's up to you. I can't answer that for you. But as you're dating someone, you want to not know if you're of the same religion as much as you want to know, are you of the same spiritual level with the same spiritual goals? Okay, so now I'll get a little transparent. When I first got with my queen, my baby, I love her, right? I was in church, she was not. It didn't bother me because I wasn't really in church for real. I was outside, my G. I was wilding outside, you know what I'm saying? So I wasn't like the church boy, but I had this idea that I wanted the mother of my kids to have Christian values. That's what I wanted. I was outside enough to kind of be like, all right, I don't want none of these women to raise specifically my daughters. I knew I had my boys on lock, but my daughters, yeah. No, I didn't want my daughter to act like these hoes out here, okay? And look, a little freebie, we'll talk more about it when we get into intentional dating, but yeah, if you marry a hoe, your daughter might mimic a hoe, which is going to make her a hoe. So just consider those things. It might be fun for you, but is that how you want your daughter to show up? Because she's going to model what she see in her mama, okay? Now, that we're going to go more into that later. I'm sorry if I already offended some of you, but you know what it is. Anyway, so I wanted her to have Christian values. So I started bringing her to church because I just wanted to see if she would be open. And she was always open. But then something weird happened, right? We started having debates and conversation. And I ended up giving my life to the Lord for real, right? But when I gave my life to the Lord, this is why I'm mentioning this. I was a part of a particular denomination, but I was not really committed to that denomination. I was committed to the truth, right? And for me, at that season in time, the Lord was and still is the truth. I don't want y'all to misunderstand what I'm saying. The Lord was more than my denomination, even though that was the denomination I was a part of. And because that was the denomination I was a part of, I had a certain level of loyalty to it, but I wasn't fully loyal because at any moment, if I learned that denomination was not the way for me to go, and I did learn that, I would leave the denomination. I knew that. So I didn't want my future wife to be committed to any particular denomination either. I needed my wife to be committed to the truth, wherever it came from, whatever that looked like. So that was important. Because when she got baptized and she gave her life to the Lord. She didn't give her life to a denomination. She didn't say, from this day forward, I'll be of this particular denomination. She gave her life to the Lord. And I eventually got rebaptized and gave my life to the Lord. And even though we're not a part of that denomination anymore, our relationship with Christ is growing. And really, this is the best it's ever been, both individually as well as collectively. There is something in knowing that if something's going on, we can take the time to pray. Or as we're having our own study in the scriptures, we can share what we've received from the Lord, or even revelation that we get, whether it be in dreams or during fasting, whatever. I'm able to have that bond with her. And that's important when we're talking about compatibility, because if I didn't have that bond with her, I'll be tempted to have that bond with somebody else, and they could get in the way of our relationship. See, this is what happens when you don't align yourself or commit yourself to someone that you're compatible with. You leave room, you leave gaps for infidelity if you're mature. See, a preference is something that you like, but it's not something that you need. And if you're cheating to get your preferences met, respectfully, you're not worthy of a lifetime commitment. You're moving childlike. You're moving very immature. And I mean, I'm not saying that you should never be in a lifetime commitment. I'm saying you probably need to grow up a little bit more so that you can see that preferences are good, but they're not long lasting. Beauty fades. Body fades, right? You know what I mean? Like charisma fades. Like there are parts of us that we have when we're young that will not be present when we get older. This is a fact. But the character of a person, who they are as a person, that's consistent outside of maybe any traumatic events that can change us. But if God willing, all things go well, who that person is consistent. You want to be compatible with them with a little sprinkle of preference. I'm not saying you should have no preference. A little sprinkle, you know what I mean? Yeah, you want them to be a baddie or whatever. You want to be rich, whatever the little preference are. Yeah, a little sprinkle of preference. But just don't allow your preference to keep you from a better promise. Don't do that. Because who you like really might not be good for you. When I talk to certain people and they're like, all men are the same or all women are the same, once I start hearing that language, I automatically know they have a type that they're committed to that's not good for them. It's the good girls that like the bad guys, you know what I mean? Or the bad guys, you know, that like the outside girl, you know, the girl that's just whatever, right? There's a type that they have. And they probably dated 20, 30 people. In reality, they dated the same person in 20, 30 different bodies. They have a type that doesn't work for who they are. Their type is incompatible. Their type is interesting. Their type is attractive, but their type is incompatible. And the only reason why you keep on surrendering to a type that doesn't work for you, because you don't know yourself. You haven't done the inner work to realize, you know what, who I am doesn't need that, whatever that is. Who I am needs something else. And when you fall in love with yourself, let me tell you, when you love yourself, you will love what is compatible for you with a little sprinkle of preference. So I hope this helps. Look, whatever question, comments you have, put it in the comment section so that I can give you more. There might be something that I'm not thinking. To me, this is pretty simple. If you do the work in order, first knowing yourself, and then learning how to learn other people just as they are. Now we're getting into weighing out the options and saying, okay, this person's compatible with me. Now, let me also say this. If we're talking about dating, I never said this before, and I'll probably say it again in a later video. I am not a fan of dating one person at a time. Let me be clear. Hold on. Don't shoot me. Don't shoot the messenger. Don't shoot me. Don't shoot me. I'm not saying be a player. I'm not saying that. I'm saying when you get to the point of dating, and you will hear this when we get into the intentional dating part of the series. When you're dating and you're getting to know people, that's step one. Before you make any commitments, you should get to know as many people as you can. I'm not saying have sex with all of them. I'm not saying be, romantically involved with all of them. I'm saying get to know. And if you don't know what that means, go watch the video before this. Get to know as many people as you can. Then as you're weighing your options, you can see who is most compatible with you. And then if you see, like, let's say you're dating 5 people and 2 of them are really compatible, like they line up with your non-negotiables. Now you can see which one has the most preferences. And that might be the one that you lock in on, because there's certain information you won't know till you're in a relationship with them. I'm going to say that. I'm going to stop right there. But let me just say that. As you're getting to know people, you want to be able to align those people with who's compatible. And then that's where you start. If you realize that you have these non-negotiables reflect who you are and where you're going. So I can't give you a list of non-negotiables because I don't know you. I'm talking to the internet, okay? I don't know you. Now, if you need help with that, life coach. Book a session with me, and we can have conversations to help you narrow down. Well, this might take several sessions, but, we can have these conversations to help you narrow down what your non-negotiables are, right? If you really, really need the help, I got you. Hit me up, right? But if you know yourself and you know where you're going, then the non-negotiables should be pretty obvious to you. And you're making a list. You're just making a list. You shouldn't, and I would say this just as a guideline, but you really shouldn't have more than 5 non-negotiables. And then I would say start with writing whatever you think is really non-negotiable. So just go ahead without critiquing, just write. And then I would rank them from 1 to whatever your last number is. And the top 5 are your actual non-negotiables. The rest of those are most likely preferences. And I'm saying that loosely. Once again, it's your life. You live the life that you want to live. But I've seen so many people disqualify really, really compatible, good people over some preference stuff. And now they're struggling. and you think that person's going to wait on ice for you, if they're really a good person, they're going to get snatched up. I mean, like that, like quick, they're going to get snatched up. So don't take good people and compatible people for granted, assuming that you're married, that you're dating with intention. All right. So you want to line them up, and if you have these people that fit your non-negotiables, cool. Now you want to see, well, which ones has the most preferences, and then you lock in on the one that has the most preferences. There is a season to keep the others as friends, for a little bit, you know what I mean? Because you don't know, right? But there will be a point where if y'all not genuinely friends, you're going to have to cut them off. You're going to have to cut your hose off. But I'll save that for intentional dating. I'll go deeper into that. I've given you a lot. Once again, whatever questions you have, put them in the comments. Remember, your presence is important. And if nobody else tells you, I love you. Peace.